Hi
Well,
everyone.
hi Pranav. So welcome
All
to
right.
welcome to Creator Toolbox. This is a show brought to you by our ServiceNow developer program, where we demo all the super new cool ServiceNow features for every developer's toolbox. In the right hand corner of our screen, that's left for me, that's right for you. You'll see that we're in the middle of our Xanadu release content, so be sure that you check out our content calendar at devlink.sn/Xanadu. Now, before we jump into our content, Pranav, how about you introduce yourself? You're over there for me.
All right. Thanks, Christy. So, hi everyone. My name is Pranav Bhagat. I am a senior developer advocate here at ServiceNow, and I think you have seen me quite a lot on the show, so probably you know me. All right. So, Christy, what we are doing today?
So today we are going to talk about Now Assist for Code, and we are joined by two of our folks responsible for this feature in ServiceNow, Patrick and Jay. So we're going to bring them on the stage and let them introduce themselves real quick.
Hello.
Woohoo! Hey.
Cool. I'll go first, Jay. Is that all right?
Of course.
Hey, everybody. Long time listener, second time caller. We're super excited to be back on the, I was about to say back on the pod, but I guess back on the tube. My name is Patrick Wilson. I'm a software engineering director here at ServiceNow. Been working at ServiceNow for a long time, 10, 11 years, something like that. I represent a lot of different products, the ServiceNow IDE and the SDK, which we've talked about here in the past, and also our suite of Now Assist for Code tools for all of the AI assist coding technologies that we have for ServiceNow developers. Super excited to be back.
Excellent.
Cool. Hey, developers. I'm Jay Couture. I'm Patrick's product counterpart, senior manager of product, covering all the same developer tooling and enablement that you're hopefully coming to know and love. And also very excited to be back on the toolbox with you to talk about an exciting thing that we've been working on.
Excellent. Awesome.
All
Well,
right.
with our introductions out of the way, Patrick, you want to kick us off?
I think I'm going to hand it off to
With
Jay.
Jay first. Okay.
Product always goes first, and then engineering comes in with the
Got
shiny
you.
demos at the
Got
end.
you. I should know that. I should know
That's
that.
that's how this product development process works.
That's right.
Awesome. All right, Jay. Well, let's kick us off.
Yeah, so today we want to talk about Now Assist for Code, which is one of the capabilities that is available as part of Creator Pro Plus. And we're going to talk about an upcoming feature for Now Assist for Code. So a little bit of a safe harbor sort of thing there. So let me start with what is Now Assist for Code, if you are not familiar with it or you haven't given it a try. So it's a generative AI powered tool that we designed to assist developers by providing code suggestions. And it helps them accelerate completion of their coding tasks and improves developer productivity when scripting on the ServiceNow platform. So what Now Assist for Code does today is code generation. And we have lots of documentation available on this. Essentially, by providing natural language prompts in the script editor on the ServiceNow platform, you can get intelligent, context-aware code generation based on those prompts. So this gives you code suggestions based on where you are on the platform, like a business rule, a script include, a client script, and it ensures that the recommendations that you get from our model are relevant to the task on which you're working.
Awesome. That sounds amazing.
And that's our first Gen AI capability. Am I right, Jay? Like code generation?
Yeah, I think that's right. It was first released in Vancouver, and it was our first kind of generative AI capability that was released. And as we've found developers working with it and we've kind of improved it over time, some of the things that they like about it are that it works directly within the platform script editor, meaning that there's no need for any sort of like external tooling or integrations. It's embedded right there within your scripting experience and makes it pretty simple and easy to use. Some of the other things that they like about it are that it reduces repetitive coding tasks and it minimizes context switching because we give you hotkeys to just use it right there in the script editor, in whichever context you're writing script, meaning that you can focus on kind of what I'll call higher order problem solving. The other thing is, for developers who might be a little bit newer to the ServiceNow platform, Now Assist for Code can really accelerate them getting up to speed with some of the platform's specific scripting nuances and some of the ServiceNow specific JavaScript APIs that we provide in that script context. It's also trained on those ServiceNow specific APIs and with ServiceNow best practices so that you get really relevant suggestions when you're prompting the model for code generation.
I love that. One of the things that I like the most about the code generation portion is that it helps me with regex, because I am not a regex expert, and it's not very often that I have to write anything with regex, but when I do, I never can remember the syntax, and it has been super helpful in that space when I've had to write regex.
I don't think I've ever met someone who's a regular expressions expert, so I think a lot of us are in the same.
No, not at all, not at all. I'm sure they're out there somewhere, but I just never have taken the time to sit down and really learn everything. So that's been super helpful for me.
Yeah, I think just to play off of that, I think that with generative AI coding tools, just in general, including this tool, I think that's where it's the most helpful, right? Like it's not the most helpful writing code that you already know how to write, because I could write that code myself. But when these AI assistants like Now Assist for Code jump in and make suggestions to you that are things that you wouldn't have even maybe thought to look up documentation for, filling in those kind of unknown unknowns, I think that's where this tool is like particularly powerful, and this category of tools particularly powerful. It's something that we've heard from we've been doing like pilot programs with customers and with our ServiceNow MVPs who have been trying this out. And something that I've heard come up repeatedly is, I was writing some code and I threw a prompt into it, and then it suggested some ServiceNow APIs that I wasn't even familiar with. Which is great because, if it's something you're familiar with, you can look up the docs, you can figure it out yourself. But when it's coming in to make suggestions that weren't things you ever would have thought of, or that are exposing new capabilities of the platform or new APIs to you, that's where I think this tooling gets really powerful. This is another great example of that.
Yeah, totally. And is it also smart enough to recognize things that I've written? So if I have APIs or script includes that I've written, is it smart enough to find those and know about those whenever I'm coding?
Not yet. Okay. So, we look at this kind of road for Now Assist for Code is, it's a long road that we're on. We want to continue to make feature enhancements to it over time. I think one of the areas that I'm most excited about sort of the growth of this product over time, and something that we'll continue investing in, is how much more of that ServiceNow context can we inject into into the tool, into the way that we're prompting our models to make better suggestions. How much more like specific ServiceNow context can we pass into that? We're already doing a lot of that with training these models that we're using on ServiceNow documentation, ServiceNow applications that have been built, just hundreds of thousands of examples of like scripts written for the ServiceNow platform. But then beyond that, how much more instance specific or environment specific information can we also inject into these prompts that we generate? And I think that over time, what you'll see is more and deeper understanding of custom script includes that you have, of custom schema that you have, et cetera. I think Jay and I are both really excited to continue digging and finding more gold there.
Nice. So what you're saying is, if I've written a script include, I should be very specific in my prompt and telling it that I want to use that particular script include?
I think the way that I would put it is that in general, as you're using Now Assist for Code, and really this applies to any AI assist tool, but of course it also applies to this one, is the more specific you can be with the way that you prompt the model, the more likely you are to get the kind of results that you're hoping to see coming out of it. If I prompt it with, do stuff, it's not going to do anything. It can't read your mind. But if I'm filling in and saying like, hey, I want you to like optimize this code for me, especially around this area or something like that. That's as you get more specific, the the value of the output is going to increase.
Awesome. Awesome.
I'll add to that a little bit
Yeah.
as well. In terms of like how the way that these models work, large language models are probabilistic rather than deterministic. So a lot of times modifying the prompt that's used, kind of rephrasing things or changing around the word order a little bit can certainly change and improve the results from the prompt to get a little bit closer to what you were looking for. So some experimentation definitely helps there in getting the best results possible.
And I have this question to both of you, Patrick and Jay. Like, I have played with this tool quite a while. And one thing I noticed is like, if I have a lot of big script that's there, and if I'm adding a code in somewhere in the middle or something, it's kind of aware about like where we are putting. Like, it's aware about the code that's above it. Is it like it was just like something happened, or is it an actual functionality that it's aware of the code that we are putting that's in the current script?
You're referring to like I've asked Now Assist for Code to like generate some new code for me, and maybe I've already defined a function or something, or like some set of variables or something like
Yeah.
that in my function, and it's recognizing that I've done that and it's leveraging that in its generation, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it would be amazing if we got that by accident, but no, yeah. So it's something that we intend to work with the product. It's part of how we prompt the model to get maybe a little bit into. I won't get like too deep into the technical stuff, but just to get into it a little bit, the way that this technology works, and any technology that's based on Gen AI, is of course there's what's called an LLM, or a large language model, that's running in our case in a data center, and you prompt that model, and then the model spits back out whatever its prediction of what's going to happen next is, right? And part of how we prompt the model is how we pass in context about the problem that we'd like the model to solve. Part of that context for us is, what does my script contain currently? Where is my cursor in the script? What comes before my cursor, so that the model knows that it can use things that's like come before the cursor, right? Or what comes after the cursor, so that the model can make some attempt to kind of stitch together what it's generating with what's going to follow. The more of that context that we can pass to the model, the more likely it is that the model can kind of stitch these things together correctly. Does it do it perfectly 100% of the time? No, it doesn't. None of these Gen AI tools do, right? But as we pass in that context, it increases the odds that what you'll get is a valuable generation. And if we're not referencing the code that already exists in your function, it's less likely that we'll get a really high quality suggestion. So of course we loop in that context. Yeah, great question.
I'll mention as well, Patrick, that we're continually adding that context to the model, such as, if I'm working in a client script and having the model recommend kind of some client script specific code or some APIs that apply in that context. So that's one of the things that we're working on, is just kind of continually improving the model and the context that we send alongside the model to improve the responses that the model gives back. And I'll add a couple of notes on the model itself. We use our own model for Now Assist for Code, and we trained it and fine-tuned it for ServiceNow specific scripting use cases. So one of the cool things there is that there's no risk of your data getting out to some other company. As Patrick mentioned, the model's running in our data center. It's all safe and sound in the secure ServiceNow environment. And we're also continually improving the model in a way that's like somewhat invisible to users. They don't have to get a new version of Now Assist for Code when we change to a new model version. We kind of do that invisibly, and we're making it better all the time. So we're really focused on improving the suggestions that the model gives continuously. And we're also working to improve the experience constantly to make it kind of more frictionless to use and make it easier to get started with and integrate as part of your core workflow. And we'll see the latest and greatest with the experience and the model when we get into the code editing demo in a little bit here.
Love it. And I think we would love to see more demos, and I think the audience is also waiting for a lot of demos. So Patrick, let's show all of them this time.
Demo time? All right, let's do it.
Yep.
I'm never nervous before demos. I'm nervous before this one because the nature of any of these Gen AI tools is that, of course, the output that you get out of it is non-deterministic. So it's always fun demoing this because there's always some degree of I'm not quite sure what's going to happen, there's only so much you can script it. That being said, I think it's going to go great. So I'm very excited. I'm going to show. We'll just go through a few different script includes that I've already kind of set up on this instance that just show different kind of examples of things that you can do with the code edit feature of Now Assist for Code. We'll walk through some of them and we'll start to kind of get a sense or a flavor of like the types of things that you can do with this technology. So I'm going to start out with, what should I start with? I'll start here. So I'm going to start out with, I think one of the things that most people maybe start out with like code edit doing, which is, hey, I've got some code and I'd really like to comment it. I'd like for which is something, it's kind of in the vein of like summarization, which is something that large language models are particularly good at doing, and that we support with Now Assist for Code. So I'm going to hover over all this code. So this is new, right? This is a new feature that we have in as part of this code edit feature, is this idea that I should be able to highlight a bunch of code. And then I'm going to trigger Now Assist, open code with Now Assist, this button here. I can also hit Command Enter to do that if I don't like right-clicking things. And when I do that, we get this shiny little modal that pops up that says, hey, edit code with Now Assist. You've selected these lines. That kicks you into like edit mode. And just to show you, if I didn't have any, if I didn't have any code highlighted and I hit Command Enter, you're in generation mode. So already we can kind of see this like new feature that's being introduced, this edit feature. So I'll escape out of that. I'll highlight my code again. I'll hit Command Enter. And now I'm editing code with Now Assist. And what I want to do here is add comments to explain, we'll say the filter. I have this filter function. I want to add some comments into my code so that it'll explain it. So let's try this out. So I'll hit submit. It starts generating the code for me and it pops in with a diff. It pops in and it says, hey, here's kind of this suggestion that we're making. And we can see what this suggestion contains is we got a couple of comments checking if a record matches the condition. That looks right. We're adding a queue name and sys-ID to this valid queues array. That looks right, et cetera, et cetera. I'll accept that. And boom, there we go. And we have this little bug that's actually an NVIDIA bug, unfortunately. But here we go. So it's made a suggestion to me. I liked it, so I went ahead and accepted it. And now I've got new code in here with these little lines in here that indicate, hey, you've got some code in here that was generated from Now Assist for code edit in this case, which is awesome. Let's do some more things. So I'll click back over here to my script includes. And I think the next thing I want to try is, let's pull up demo number 9. I like this one. So here's another script that we got here. And this one is just it's a simple glide record query, right? We've seen this a billion times. And what I want to do with this is maybe I'm looking at this and I'm like, I feel like there's probably a more secure variant of this. So I'll highlight all of my code. I'll hit Command Enter and I'll say, change the glide record query to have better security, something like this. I'll hit generate. Here we go. And this is a really simple pitch, right? It's probably one a lot of folks on the call could have made. But here it's just making a update where it's changing my glide record to a glide record secure call. Glide record secure is, of course, an API that ServiceNow has that executes ACLs and things over the top of a glide record query, which is generally what you probably want to do. In this case, we've trained our model against enough ServiceNow code and enough ServiceNow APIs where it can recognize that in the context of things like glide record queries, typically using glide record secure is like a best practice, and it'll make that suggestion for you. Of course, you can reject prompts. I wouldn't reject this prompt in this case, but if I wanted to, I could say, I don't like that very much. And then it just resets, gives me my prompt again. And maybe from here, I can start iterating on my prompt a little bit, using glide record secure. Here, I'm like iterating on my prompt. I'll regenerate. It should just generate the exact same thing. Again, it does because this is the right answer. And then maybe at this point I can say, yeah, this is awesome. Accept that. Thank you. Now I've got some new code.
Some
And
might
Patrick,
also,
Yeah.
go ahead, Pranav.
Go ahead.
I
Okay,
was gonna
I'll go
say-
ahead. So Patrick,
Yes. Anyone can ask.
Okay, so I was going to make a color commentary here that some may also prompt it to make better variable names other than the var gr.
That's a common one, right? Like people hate seeing GR all over the place. Let's try it. I didn't try this as part of my demo, but that's the fun of Now
This
Assist.
was part of our CreatorCon India AI track lab that we did. Everybody thought that was pretty great.
Let's try it. I don't know how meaningful it'll be able to get with this tiny little query, but here we go. So
At
in this
least it's
case, I
glide
think
record.
it called a glide record instead of GR. In this case, I think that the model has basically no context for how to name this variable because it literally is just a glide record query. But
That's fair.
you know, you run this in like maybe you're querying incident or something like that. Typically, what I see the model do is it will rename it to like incident GR or something like that, which is slightly better, and the community reacts less violently against a variable name like that.
For sure.
Got another demo that I can do here. So let's see here.
Patrick,
Yeah.
Patrick, sorry to interrupt you. I have one question. You see this button, right? Turn on ECMAScript 2021. That's there. Basically, it lets you use the new ES6 syntax and everything. So if you turn it on and ask like to generate the code, will it like generate ES6 syntax? Is there any integration to it, or is it more about like it's not aware about this button as of now? I'm talking about this turn on the script.
Jay unmuted, so maybe Jay, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I'll say that's one of the things that we're working on. As I've mentioned, we're continually adding to the context that the model receives and the suggestions that it generates. So that's certainly one of the things that we're working on, and ensuring that if you've got your script in ES12 mode, that when appropriate and necessary, the model will provide ES12 relevant APIs as opposed to ES5. As of right now, I'll say that when you're working in ES5 mode, the model does do better with ensuring that it's providing the right API suggestions there. So we're part of the way there. And as I've mentioned, that's something that we're continually working on in terms of the context.
Mm-hmm. And also, Pranal, thank you for the little plug for that ECMAScript latest feature, that little toggle box up there. That's nice. That's another thing that one of my teams worked on. Yeah, we're really excited to, you know, I think it's not the feature we're here to talk about, but I am excited to, you know, bring the latest ECMAScript support to things like global script includes and stuff. That's something that the community, I think, has been asking for a really long time. Hey, you know, it's great that I can use all this fancy new JavaScript stuff in my scoped applications, but, you know, so much of the work that I do is in global. What are you going to do for me there? And this is sort of our answer to that, is that we'll allow you to kind of opt in specific scripts into running in ES latest mode. Of course, I'll just say that there's a big caveat with this, and it's a question I've gotten before, which is, can I just turn this little toggle box on and everything's just going to work magically? And the answer is no, because, like, you know, ES5 and ES12 are different language specs, right? You know, there's some degree of like, you'll want to test your script. You may want to rewrite pieces of your script to actually respect ES latest, you know, like language features, etc. I think it's most useful for if you're building net new scripts, you know, maybe build them in ES latest mode, just like right from the ground up. Or maybe if you're touching a script already, you already are making a big refactor, maybe opt it into ES latest there and, you know, do the work that you need to do to make it work. So yeah, another feature we're really excited about that has nothing to do with Now Assist for Code.
Hey,
we can talk about that later.
What I was thinking, like maybe in the future, like when we just turn it on, whatever the script that was in ES5, it automatically converted into ES6 syntax using Now Assist code generation. See, I made something up just now.
maybe one day in the future when these code generation tools work perfectly all the time, I think that maybe we could explore something like that. Maybe one day. I think it's an exciting thing to think about. But I think for now, you know, the big thing that we say with Now Assist for Code, and this is regardless of any tool you're using, right, is, hey, we're going to make suggestions. Test the suggestions, though. Like, make sure that it works. It's not, none of these tools can come to you and genuinely say with a straight face, every piece of code that we will ever suggest to you is going to be perfect. It's going to be right. It's going to work 100% of the time. That's just not how these tools work. They make suggestions, and then it's still incumbent on the developer to check those suggestions, validate them, see if they make sense, test them out. Maybe one day in the future, these tools don't have that limitation, and then, then there's some really interesting things that we can do, but we'll see.
Yep. That's why I always say trust but verify.
Trust but verify.
Trust
that
but
is true of
verify.
every Gen AI feature, no matter where you're using.
Totally. We actually have a question in the chat, Patrick, if you'd like to take it.
Sure.
I'll take the question, Christy.
Okay, go ahead.
So the question is from Cole, and the question is, can you have conversation with the LLM, or is it only code generation at this time? Cole's wondering if we can discuss higher level design and ideas with the model. And I'll say at this time, we're really focused on code generation, code editing, making you much more productive when writing script on the platform for some of the use cases that we talked about. This is feedback that we've heard, so it's certainly something that we are thinking about. So it makes sense to us and something we're looking into.
Awesome.
Cool. I'll do one more demo.
All right.
Yep.
I could do 10 of these demos, but at some point you're just seeing the same thing over and over. This one's cool.
I'm sure people will take it. No, it's good. I'm sure everybody will love it. It's fine.
Awesome. All right. Well, I can keep going, but so let's do one more change. So I opened up this other demo script here, and this one is again, probably code that you've seen before. We're querying sysuser, and then for each of those sysusers, where it looks like we're querying incident, we're getting the incidents assigned to that user, and then we're kind of concatenating them all together. It's kind of this like query within a query kind of syntax. I have an instinct as a developer that maybe this code is not the most efficient code in the world. So I'm going to highlight it all. I'm going to hit Command Enter, pull up my trusty edit code with Now Assist modal. I'm going to say, make the code more efficient. Let's see what it can do with this. Hopefully it does something useful. Here we go. So it even suggests, maybe I haven't done a ton of ServiceNow development, or maybe I've just never seen this API before, but it jumps in and says, hey, I'm going to replace your glide record query with this thing called glide aggregate. And then, it seems like maybe what we're doing here is basically an aggregation. There's very efficient ways of doing aggregations on the platform. We have this great API for doing a glide aggregate. And it jumps in with a diff suggestion, kind of a bigger diff suggestion than what we've seen before, that'll use glide aggregate to go and get this data for me. So I'll go ahead and accept that. This is a bigger change than maybe just rename my variables to be more meaningful. So this is one of those scenarios where maybe I want to go in and test this for correctness. This is, after all, just a suggestion, but it gets me kind of down the road of like, I'm using glide aggregate. It made the right kind of contextual suggestion that I should use glide aggregate. I didn't ask it to do that. Our model has just been trained on so much ServiceNow code that does things like turn glide record calls into glide aggregate calls for doing this category of query, that it's able to make kind of the right suggestion here in this case. So just another example that I think goes a little bit beyond the more kind of straight down the middle examples of like add comments and change my variable names to be meaningful, where now we're getting into, here's something of a little more complexity that's actually maybe meaningfully helping me do my job as a developer by suggesting the right APIs to me at the right time. So it's an example that I think demonstrates some of the power of Now Assist for Code.
Totally.
And I learned I was just saying that I learned there is a API to generate catalog items recently by using Now Assist for Code. I was not even aware that there is an API for it. And I was like, I'll probably do glide record and create something, but I was like, let me check with Now Assist. I put a prompt and boom, I got a catalog item, some API. I was like, I have never seen it. So that's the power of, I think, code generation, best practices, and how it's trained.
Totally. Yeah. And I've heard from some of our ServiceNow MVPs who, to be in that group, I imagine you have to know at least some things about ServiceNow APIs. You're probably something of a subject matter expert in them if you're in that group. And in their trial runs of using this technology, the model is making very like it was suggesting APIs that that group of people had never heard of, and guaranteed if they haven't heard of them, I've never heard of those APIs either, but they're real APIs, they're documented. There's a very rich API set as part of ServiceNow. It can be hard to know what to use when. And I think that something I'm excited about with these code generation tools is, I keep harping on it, but like its ability to jump in and suggest things that you don't know, and you don't even know that you don't know it. That's, I think, where this stuff starts to get really fun.
It's very cool. We do have a couple more questions in the chat. I don't know, Jay or Patrick, do you guys want to address those? Yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll take the question from Chris. Chris, thank you for the question. His question is, does this work in the IDE for writing JS modules and creating Fluent? So first of all, thank you for the plug for the ServiceNow IDE. For folks who may not be familiar with the ServiceNow IDE and SDK and Fluent, if that's kind of news to you, please go check out the prior episode that we have a couple months back here on Creator Toolbox. Patrick and I talk all about that. As for the question, does this work? As of right now, no. Do we want it to? At some point, yes, absolutely. So we think this is a great idea, and stay tuned.
Awesome. And I think Chris had another question about generating Ajax script includes, or stubs for Ajax script includes in client scripts.
Yeah, Now Assist for Code works everywhere that you have these like code editing boxes in the platform. For the most part, like anywhere where you're like editing script in a form environment like this, you can use Now Assist for Code. There are some caveats to that, like some of the builder products don't, depending on like which version of the code editor they use. Some of them do, and some of them don't have support for Now Assist for Code. I think Flow Designer does. I think UI Builder does not. So, there's a little bit of like, it doesn't work quite everywhere, but it does work almost everywhere. And you can absolutely use this in client scripts or in like, et cetera. And the model does its best to kind of take in some of the contextual information around like trying to make like good suggestions. Of course, the one caveat that I'll always say is like this model and no other model will ever make always perfect suggestions all of the time. I am, and I'll speak for Jay here to say that we're really interested in what types of use cases folks are most interested in, the things that you think that Now Assist for Code would be best at. We really want to hear about it. And we want to hear about the areas where maybe you think it's underperforming and areas that we can invest in making it better for you. So as you're playing with this, as you're using this, if you have feedback on it, please get in contact with us. We'd love to hear it. We're building this for developers at the end of the day. And I want this, and Jay wants this. I'll speak for Jay. We want this to be useful for you. So in the areas where it is, we want to hear about it. We can keep investing in it. In the areas where it's not, we really want to hear about it so that we can fix it for you. That's my little spiel about get in contact with us. We want to hear. Get in the comments.
One question I had too, you mentioned that it's not in UI Builder yet. I'm assuming there's plans for it to be in UI Builder at some point, or is that somewhere down the road? Maybe.
I don't want to hypothesize about the roadmap too much. We want to bring Now Assist for Code to all the places where we think it will be useful for developers. Mm-hmm. I think that's maybe the shorter version of that. Exactly how that lands in terms of like a prioritized roadmap is something that's always evolving, of course. But
sure.
Yeah. But it's I don't want to. Here's
enough.
Another one. I'd like to hear from all of you where if there's a place where you'd expect it to work and it's not, and you think it'd be really powerful. We'd like to hear about that too.
You're open a Pandora's box right now. I'm pretty sure there.
I love hearing from everybody. So
okay. We'll be sure to blast all your contact info on the YouTube channel.
Leave out my home address, but other
yeah, exactly. Oh, excellent. Okay. Do you have any more demos for us, Patrick? Are you all done with your demo?
I'm all done with demo time. I mean, I could keep going, but at a certain point,
we're going to run out of time at some point.
Maybe I'll just talk a little bit about some of the other kind of ways that code editing might be useful. So Patrick showed a bunch of awesome examples there. Some of the ways that we've been playing with it that we think it does pretty well are, we were talking about regex earlier. So adding additional specificity to regex validation is definitely something that I like to use it for, because regex is just kind of obtuse and frustrating for me to work with. So if I have some regex already, and one of the cool things about this sort of suite of Now Assist for Code tools is I can use code generation to write the regex initially, and then I can use code editing to improve that, to add some additional specificity to get exactly where I want to. I don't need to keep regenerating to get it exact. I kind of get the benefit of having both of these features hand in hand, where I can first generate it and then edit it and make sure that it gets exactly to that kind of level of validation that I'm looking for with like date time validation. Maybe I want something really specific with like hours, minutes, seconds, or improving my variable input validation. That's a really cool use case as well. We've played with adding descriptive error messages to improve error handling when these scripts get executed. Patrick showed commenting code, like variable names as well. Those are some of the things that I'm personally not so great about, is like meaningful variable names that are consistent and writing really descriptive comments for my code. So that kind of saves me time and letting me do that. We saw the example of kind of making the script more efficient by replacing some of those inefficient queries. We saw the glide aggregate use case, but there are kind of lots of other use cases that fall under this optimization, like modifying repetitive loops or functions and kind of storing that information in variables and then referencing those variables subsequently. So that's one of the pretty cool things that we've used it for as well. The list kind of goes on and on, like improving the logging in my script to make it easier to debug. So as Patrick mentioned, as you kind of get access to this, and it's coming soon, it's not out yet, but code editing is coming soon, and you start to play with it, definitely let us know about like which use cases work really well, which ones don't work so well. And as Patrick mentioned, you know, where else on the platform do you want to see it that it doesn't necessarily come up today? And we're super open to and interested in feedback, because we're very dedicated to making both the experience of working with Now Assist for Code, as well as the quality of the suggestions, really, really good to kind of facilitate that really nice ergonomic developer experience when working on the ServiceNow platform. So that's my spiel.
I have one question like to both of you, Patrick and Jim. It's about like the prompt. Because I think like for any analysis product, prompt is the most important part. That's what I know. I think a lot of people who have watched me and Christy, we have always talked about prompt. So what are some of the best practice in terms of prompts? Like how should we give a prompt, right? Because to be honest, like initially when I started using code edit and code generation, I was like putting a basic thing, okay, generate me this. It was working fine, but for some bigger code or something, how should we write a proper prompt? Like, is it like some things that we have to consider, some hacks or something like to get a proper code out of it?
Maybe I'll take the first stab at that, Patrick, and then you can add to it.
Sure.
So my recommendation for working with Now Assist for Code is, as Patrick mentioned earlier, be descriptive, but more so be direct with what you want the model to do. So rather than writing a prompt, which is something to the effect of, I want this script to X, Y, and Z, say, write a function that, you know, does something, or rewrite my variable names, like being very specific with a verb that you want the model to do for your prompt really helps the quality of the responses. And the other thing that I would mention is giving one very direct, specific instruction at a time tends to get the best results, rather than, hey, first do this, then do that, then do that, then do that. The model might do that, but if I kind of if I didn't parallelize those instructions and I took them one at a time, I serialized them, we find that as of right now, that tends to get better quality responses. And this is, of course, something that we're modifying over time as we continually train the model and improve it to be maybe a little bit less sensitive, perhaps, to the prompt, and sort of just think about the intent of the question. So that's something that's going to continually improve over time. But as of today, with code generation that's available right now, I think those are my best practices for working with it. Patrick, anything you wanted to add?
Not really. I think you kind of covered it. Yeah. Be verb oriented and be specific. And I would also just add maybe like, feel free to iterate on your prompts. It's something I do too, is like, I prompt it, I get an output. It's not quite what I wanted. Maybe I reject it and try again. Like like play with my prompt a little bit, prompt engineer it, right? Like I'm prompt engineering my prompt here. And, I think over time you kind of develop a little bit of like an intuition for how to phrase things, how to, I feel like, using some of this AI stuff has like rewired my brain in some way. Like I'm kind of like, I feel myself like changing how I'm talking. Chris posted a funny comment about anyone else super respectful and asking AI to do something. Yes, I am. I never yell at the AI. I'm very polite. One day when the AI overlords take over, they'll remember me as being one of the good ones, and they'll be nice to me, I think.
Not me. I'm going first.
I've been saying please and thank you to Siri for a long time now. So just in case she decides that she's going to go nuts.
I mean, Siri has access to your phone book, right? So she could cause some real damage.
Totally. Yeah, I'm not messing with her. She's too powerful.
I'm very demanding and impatient. So in the case that they turn on us, it's not going to go well for me.
Oh, funny. We had another question from Rishi in the chat. I'm not sure, this might fall more into flow generation than code generation, but it's being able to connect Now Assist code generation with Now Assist for Flow Designer. If we're building a flow using a prompt, can it generate custom actions?
I don't know.
So okay. I'll say that I believe in, I think it's called Action Designer. Now Assist for Code is available. So you could use flow generation to create your flow and then pop open an Action Designer, and then use Now Assist for Code to get to the script that you want within that action.
Totally. Awesome. And then Chris had another question. Do prompts build on each other, i.e. take previous context of the current chat or previous into account?
It currently does not take into account like this kind of like built up context of like, hey, I've already prompted it maybe these 3 times and it's made these 3 suggestions. Like, I think when you start to get into that, you start to get a little bit into something we talked about earlier, which is this like maybe conversational interface that is keeping like a running history of this conversation, this back and forth that you've had with the model. It's something that I'll say that I am personally interested in, that you may see pop up in the product at some point. Future looking statements, etc. Safe harbor. But it's something that it's a cool idea. I think. Jay, anything you'd add to that?
No, I'm of the same mind. Mm-hmm. It kind of goes to the point about context. So just kind of continually improving the context that the model gets about, basically everywhere that you're using it. So that's one of the things that we're just continually adding to over time.
Awesome.
I think like I tried something like that. So I generated a code and it didn't came out the right that I liked, but certain part was correct. So I just kept the code as it is in the script and wrote another prompt. So basically it took into consideration the old prompt also in some way, because the code was already there, and tried to generate a better code out of it. I tried something like that. It kind of worked. So that's a kind of a workaround. If somebody's trying, you can play with it if you want. I hope it makes sense. Like keeping the prompt code, keeping the first code in the script itself, and putting another prompt, right? So that the old code is there, and now when you're putting the new code, that the LLM is getting to know the context, like what code is before. So kind of like you can help out. I don't know whether it makes sense. Maybe it's a live coding happy hour thing. I can come up and try something like that.
Sounds like a good episode.
Yeah, always interested to hear how folks are using this and getting value out of it. So yeah, very exciting.
Nice.
All right. I think
cool.
That brings us to the end. So thank you so much, Patrick and Jay, for showing us code generation. And also in the past, you showed us IDE, everything. Thank you so much for what you are doing. And folks, if you are interested, make sure you connect with Patrick and Jay. I hope they are okay with you connecting them on LinkedIn and other places.
Love it.
Until
We
then,
love it. Please
yeah,
connect with us.
yeah,
I'll say one plug
absolutely.
just because he happens to be here. Chris Nanda's in the chat. He's been posting some really helpful comments. He also sends us emails sometimes about like he's been trying out the SDK and the IDE. And I love it when Chris emails because he'll email with like an issue he's having. And I immediately just turn around and forward it to my team and say, hey, you guys, like, you know, figure this out or whatever.
That's
Like,
awesome.
here's some feedback. I love being able to do stuff like that. I'd love to get more of it. So, you know, thanks, Chris, for the feedback. And also, everybody else, please
You heard
email
it,
us.
folks. You heard it. Flood his mailbox.
Heard it.
Do it. Awesome. All right.
All
Well,
right.
thank
Thanks,
you, Patrick
everyone.
and Jay. Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the time.
Yep.
Thanks for having us, and thanks everyone for the great questions.
Awesome.
Bye.
See you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.